The dirty secret in dentistry is, 70% of offices don't test, shock, and treat their water lines, which is really bad for patients. The good news is that really doesn't get out much in the public, and it's not really something we want to publicize outside of dentistry because we don't want to see that number from 60% go to 70%.
So now we're going to jump into the Ask Ken segment. Here's the question that came in. Let's say that there's a group that wants to sell their business and say, let's say the next 3 years or the next 5 years. What is the first financial move that they should be making today to be able to try to maximize or optimize their valuation? This is a great question. I get this a lot at conferences and just with anybody and everybody that I'm talking to. Everybody's very interested in this. And this is how I like to try to answer that question. I want you to think about like a highlight reel. And a highlight reel is, and think of it as an athlete who puts together their highlight reel. It shows all the touchdowns that they caught or the goals that they scored and everything that goes with it. When a potential buyer is going to look at your financial statements, there have to be some highlights in it. Because if you can't capture their attention with what you're currently doing, then they're going to pass. They won't even take a second look at your business. So what you need to do when it comes to the financial statements is you've got to figure out and organize things so that they can see your highlights. It's not about them seeing the whole picture. It's just to get them interested to say, whoa, these guys have done some really interesting, cool things that make them a little bit different than everybody else. So it's not about trying to fix up or put lipstick on a pig, so to speak. It's really about getting you in front of them with what your strengths are and what your highlight reel is and getting them excited and interested in that. All right. So with that Ask Ken segment completed, we're going to move right on and introduce Steve Craig. Steve, let's take a second, have you introduce yourself to the listeners, and then we're going to dive right into the truths that you want to bring to the group.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time, Ken, and I like the flow of the questions. It's good that they're planning 3 to 5 years out. A lot don't do that. And like basically what you described is building a resume of why someone should want to partner with you. So it's awesome. My name's Steve Craig. I'm the Vice President of Sales in the Central Market for a company called Solmetex. I started my career quite some time ago in healthcare, started out in ophthalmology, did everything there from a pharma rep to an OR rep to managed care to eventually we were getting to the point where we were building out the DSO space. Your optometrist is your general dentist, your glaucoma, retina, all that. Ophthalmologists are your specialists in dentistry. And then from there, I was contacted to build out the DSO space for Johnson & Johnson in the dental division of them. So I did that for a few years and got tapped on the shoulder, moved into senior leadership. I was there for quite some time, almost like 19 years. And then my original CEO for my J&J days, he left and went over to Dentsply for a while. He contacted me and said, I just became the CEO of a company called Solmetex. We're merging 3 other companies. We're going to move 4 into 1, and none of them have a presence in the DSO space. And asked me, would you like to join the journey all over again? So about 2.5 years ago, that's what I did. I joined the journey with him all over again. Spent the last 2 years kind of building out a presence for Solmetex, Stericyl, Dry Shield, and Implant in the DSO space. And now, once again, got tapped on the shoulder to move into senior leadership, running teams on both the commercial and the DSO side. So that's kind of getting up to speed a little bit of my career and where I'm at today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Steve, you've been a staple in the industry for so long and been a trusted advisor to many, many people. You probably don't know that I know this about you, but I know a lot of people who have told me that you've guided their career, you've given them input and feedback on how to do different things and how to be successful in the industry. People who do that and they do it for free and they just do it because they want to help and make this industry better. I think that's one of the things I love the most about dentistry, is that it's a tight-knit community. Yeah, there's some competition back and forth, but generally it stays very healthy. And there's a lot of mutual respect that everybody has for each other. But whenever your name comes up specifically, there's always the highest amount of praise about who you are and how you do business.
I appreciate that, Ken. And, I hear the same about you. That's probably why we're talking today. But, one of the things I love to do is build high-performing teams and making them cohesive. And it's all about the people. And dentistry is not really about dentistry. It's a people business. So same thing on the vendor side. It's a people business. So, I love to develop, mentor, and coach people. And whether they're going to stay here or move on in their career, it's about making the industry better as a whole. And like you said, and I saw some of this in ophthalmology, you just don't see it in dentistry. And that's why people get into dentistry and never leave, because it is a great community. It's probably the greatest time to be in dentistry. But I think everybody says that of going through their career. It should be getting better every single day. And that's what we're all here to do is how do we partner and develop in not just your own organization and your own self, but how do you develop the people around you and how do you develop the industry as a whole?
Well, I love it. It's such a great perspective. And again, with literally decades of experience here, it's so impressive. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and start taking us on a journey here about what you see in the dental industry that needs to be improved or changed? This is our chance to shine the light on that.
Yeah, I think, I'll touch on two things. I think one, I think we need to grasp that, prior to COVID, probably 40% of the US population didn't go to the dentist. Post COVID, it's about 60%. Of the individuals that have, if you want to call it dental insurance, there really is no such thing as dental insurance. There's nothing to insure. It's a coupon, it's a subsidy, but half of those individuals don't even use that benefit that they're given. I think we need to band together as an industry to figure out how do we take that 50% back down to 50, back down to 40, get it down to 30, get it down to 20, to realize that there is a medical dental integration. How do we get everyone on the same page? And how do we have patients value what is taking place? And I think a lot of that is external, a lot of that's internal. At the end of the day, patients vote with their feet. There's a dental home for everybody. And that includes dentists, that includes the team members inside the practice, that includes the patients. And ultimately, patients vote with their feet. We have a lot of bickering back and forth of, private practice is where you should be at. You should have a lifestyle practice. DSOs are the devil. DSOs are great. Patients are going to all these different factors, and that opens up access to care. And ultimately, patients, like I said, vote with their feet and they show up where they want to be seen. And I think we need to embrace that there's all different types of opportunities in dentistry. There's all different ways to practice dentistry. It's probably the beauty of dentistry. Patients either show up every 3, 6, 9, 12 months like they're supposed to, or they come every 5 or 10 years. And that's why dentistry is a great space to be in. But like I said, it's really how do we get to have everyone realize it's a people business. It's not about crowns. It's not about Invisalign. It's not about whitening. It's really a people business. And if for most practices, if they take care of their teams, the teams will take care of the patients, which will take care of the community, and everyone's thriving. And that's why you see a dentist on almost every corner. And probably what opened my eyes to, some of that belief, like what you talked about in the very beginning, was I watched a podcast with the head real estate guy for Burger King, and he was retiring. And, in your and I day, Burger King and McDonald's were the king. And they asked this gentleman, you're retired now, but the David Goliath story, you were on McDonald's heels your whole career. You guys stayed with them. You're right there. It was an incredible journey. How did you do it? And he kind of looked and he kind of laughed and he said, we did nothing. And the guy's like, what do you mean you did nothing? He goes, I just told my team, enjoy your life, have a good time. Let McDonald's spend all their money finding the best sites, investing, doing all this. Just buy the closest site you can get to them after they pull the trigger. They're going to head north for breakfast. They'll get them for breakfast. They got to head back south to go home. We'll get them for dinner. And that explains why, there's enough business out there for everybody. There really isn't a capacity issue in dentistry. There's enough patients out there. Everyone is thriving and surviving. We can do things a lot better, but it really opens your eyes to that's why there's an Amico and Shell on every corner, a Chase and Citibank, a dentist on every corner. But how do we take care of people better, and how do we make it more of a people business so patients want to go to the dentist and want to embrace their oral health just as they do with their overall health or their medical health?
Yeah, what I love about this is what you're talking about is taking 100% accountability for the one thing you control, and that's
Correct.
you, and that's your mindset, and that's how you're going to take on the world. I love it. Other people's success generally means that it's going to breed success for others in the same industry over time if they're going to play nice.
Correct.
The other thing that I think is interesting about what you said, that I think sometimes dentists can get caught in a little bit of well, there's nothing really different about me, but there are unique opportunities to niche ourselves
Absolutely.
whether it's a specific procedure or, there could be any number of ways to do that. And just with a little bit of creativity, you can make yourself stand out. And then, but at the end of the day, if your patients are leaving frustrated and angry, that practice is going to struggle over time. But to the degree you really hone in on something that can make you stand out a little bit or be a little bit different and niche into one corner of what dentistry has to offer, how do you think about that? How do you coach people through that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the beauty of dentistry. You get to pick and choose what type of insurance you want to take. Do you want to take insurance? What type of patients you want to see? What type of procedures you want to perform? That is the beauty of dentistry. At the end of the day, it's a small business. I mean, you're running that, whether it's at the DSO, a little bit larger scale, whether it's at the private practice scale. But I definitely believe that we need to embrace more of that and realize that, there is like I said, a dental home for everybody. And that is where people want to go. And that's where, like I said, they're going to vote with their feet of how they want that to be. But that's the beauty of dentistry. It's a great profession. It's a great practice, and it truly helps people. And the more you embrace the team and the patients, the more success you're going to have of getting people to want to come in. And you probably see this all the time being on the CFO side of things. So many practices want to focus on new patients and they talk about the new patient numbers, but they haven't added a hygienist in 2 years, which tells you just as many people are going out the back door as coming in the front door. But the more you can talk about what we just talked about, the more you'll keep people in the back door shut and adding more people, which means then you need to build a stronger business where you're adding more hygienists, more clinicians to the practice, which is a great thing for everybody.
There can sometimes be a hang up around strategy. And the interesting thing, I've been around for a long time too, Steve. You and I are kind of old veterans here. And the interesting thing is that there's really no innovation around strategy today. Strategy and how you can go to market and all these different things. Having the best strategy is actually irrelevant. Having the best execution,
Yes.
that's what makes things happen. That's what makes things go. How do you react to that? What do you think of that when I say that?
I totally agree with that. There's so much CE going on. There's so much easier ways to access learning. I know everyone says I wasn't taught anything in dental school, but on the business side of things, but I don't really think it mattered because your job in dental school is to learn your craft and get your hand speed up. And everyone thinks once I get out there, I'll be the owner and I'll tell people what to do. It comes back to a people business once again. And you can create the greatest plan in the world, but if you don't execute on it, it's all for nothing. And when I'm out consulting with groups and with practices, that's one of the things I always tell them. We play in the dental water space, which probably is the dirtiest part of dentistry.
No
Probably
pun intended, right?
no part attended. Probably 70% of practices don't test, shock, and treat their water lines. But a lot of times when I end those talks, where I have that conversation with them is, 5 frogs are sitting on a log, 3 decide to jump. How many are left? And most are going to say 2. It's no 5. Deciding to jump and jumping are 2 different things. So I always tell them I've kind of done a service for you and a disservice today, because now, the service was I educated you on kind of why you should be doing what you should be doing. And the disservice is you no longer can say, I didn't know, or that's the way we've always done it, because now you do know better. So I think a lot of it does come down to execution, and the people who can execute and operationalize and systemize things are the ones that succeed, and they're the ones you see on the top. And it's easy to take that plan nowadays and learn that plan, but it's a totally different thing to execute it. And it's part of outside of dentistry and inside of dentistry. Probably one of the biggest problems we have is, you get on social media and you look at what people are posting, and it seems like they have it all together and everything's great. They're an overnight success. You don't see how long it took them to get there. You don't see the pain and struggle that they aren't posting. They're only posting the good stuff. And that's what, weighs on people of why am I not there? I've been here this long. I should be there. So like you said, it all comes down to execution.
Yeah. And there's one word that comes up that I've I've never told you this, but I actually attribute this word to you. And it's the word consistency, because I see you showing up on LinkedIn, sharing positive quotes and things all the time. And you're never doing anything like super fancy or flashy. And I think it's a great testament to who you are just as a person, the way that you show up, and consistency ultimately ends up winning the day. I always tell people, if you don't quit, It means you never lose. The moment you quit is when that other person wins. And the way you show up and the way that you bring that consistency to the feed in LinkedIn, it's something I've enjoyed over the years. It's been amazing.
I appreciate that, and I think, a lot of it's kind of the old, Michael Jordan quote, "I never lost a game, I just ran out of time." And I think from an early age, my father, and then I played sports as a kid, and it was one of the things that was instilled in me. It's not about being flashy. It's not about, it's doing the basic tackling and blocking and getting down to the basics. And if you can do that over and over again on a consistent basis, you're going to outlast everybody, because you put in the work. You understand it's about the basics. And if you can really get consistent and drive those basics, you're going to be successful. And a lot of it, you have to define your own success. Don't try to define someone else's plan. You got to define your own and live and go by that. But I appreciate you recognizing that.
Yeah, you bet. Maybe could you share for a second a pivot that you had to make when you realized that you were going to head down a road and you were excited about it, but then you ultimately sort of you had to pivot. And I'm saying this because there are often dentists who come out of school and they end up getting frustrated with dentistry and they start looking around and thinking maybe there's something more I could do, or maybe I could add some new modalities into my practice, or, different things that would get them excited again. I'd be interested how you think about that.
Yeah, like I said, one of the things I love to do is build high performing cohesive teams. And I think what everyone thinks is, and you see it in sports now, everyone's trying to do it. You bring in all the A players, and try to build a team. And I was kind of moving down that road at one point, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He actually played high level college football, played in the NFL. And one of the things he said to me was, most championship teams are won by the B players. They're not won by the A players. The A players are going to fight with each other. They're going to want the limelight. They're going to want the rewards. But kind of what we talked about before, getting back to the basics. If you can get strong B players and really develop those individuals, you're going to watch your team thrive. You still need those A players to carry things. But, that was a changing point, like for Michael Jordan as well. He wanted to shoot the ball every time. He wanted to be the guy. Well, then they put some people around him. You're starting to see that now in sports, of realizing that, building these dream teams sometimes don't work out because everyone wants the ball, everyone wants the limelight. But those B
Mhm.
players understand their role. And really what it gets down to is, how do you do your job and do your jobs the most effective to really help the team as a whole? And it's kind of like, you look back at the Bulls, Dennis Rodman came in to be a defensive star and a rebounder. Like you said, my job is Michael Jordan's going to win the game for us by scoring points. But if Michael misses a shot, if I get the ball and give it back to him, that's one more chance for Michael to win the game and score. So he realized his job was to get the rebound on a missed shot and get it back to Michael, or get it back to another teammate that could score. That is what it's all about. And that's where I learned, it is truly about having some strong A players to elevate the team and drive things. But the B players are the ones that are going to take you to the championship.
Yeah, that core blocking and tackling, that center or that nose guard, right? That just gets buried in the pile every time. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that are gaining that yardage, right? I mean,
Absolutely. They're the ones causing the havoc and allowing other people like the linebackers to come in and get the limelight. But they're the ones, yeah, like you said, getting in, getting their nose dirty and blocking the way.
yeah, I love it. So I think the way I'd kind of summarize what we're talking about here is it's roll up the shirt sleeves, go to work, find something you're passionate about and excited about, and then all of a sudden, right, the patients they're going to feel that they're going to see that you've invested in your practice or in your skill set to the degree that you're excited to help them in their lives. I think, yeah, there's so many good things about this, Steve. But any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think that's what it's it. If you take care of your team's going to take care of the patient, and it is going to take care of the community that you work in. And like I said, that's where I spend a lot of time working with my team, working with customers around that. Of, like I said, the dirty secret in dentistry is, 70% of offices don't test, shock, and treat their water lines, which is really bad for patients. The good news is that really doesn't get out much in the public, and it's not really something we want to publicize outside of dentistry, because we don't want to see that number from 60% go to 70%. But, even like, like I said, a lot of it's taking care of your team. One of the beauties that probably came out of COVID was we now realize, going into COVID, we thought all the aerosols came out of the patient. So if the
Mhm.
patient's healthy, we're in a great spot. Well, now what we've realized post COVID is 78% of the aerosols are coming straight out of the dental unit water lines. And if you're not cleaning your dental unit water lines, that's really massively impacting your team. And one of our KOLs, Michelle Strange, tells a story all the time about, before she knew better, she ended up with a lot of infections, upper respiratory infections from probably breathing in that water is what she's tracing it back to. And that's why in dentistry, we see a high rate of eye infection, ear infection, nasal infection, upper respiratory infection, because it's bad for the patient to be treated with unclean water. It's another thing for your team to be breathing that in all day long. And they're there a lot more and have a lot more impact from that than even the patients. Obviously, if the patients find out, they're not going to show up to the practice. But if your team is sick, it massively impacts being a CFO. You know that.
Yeah.
If you don't have the labor, you really can't see patients. And that's where we stress a lot because it is a small business. It's there to treat patients. It's also ultimately there to make money. But if you don't have water, you can't treat anybody. If you don't have a good working vacuum or compressor, you can't treat anybody. So that's where we spend a lot of time in the unseen areas. But without it, you could have a waiting room full of brand new patients. But if you don't have clean water, if you don't have water, if you don't have a working compressor and vacuum, you can't see anybody. Water is the number one instrument used in dentistry. And that's where we spend a lot of time trying to educate and protect that. So that's kind of where I would wrap it up with.
That's perfect. All right. Well, that's it for today's episode of the Dental Truth Project. Thanks again to Steve Craig for joining us. I'm Ken Kaufman. And until next time, keep seeking the truth that helps dentistry thrive. Happy day.